I know, welcoming Colonel Ghannon Burton, retired from the United States Marine Corps, Colonel Burton, and your handle, right? Is that what it's called?
It's Crow.
Crow,
yeah.
right?
Crow, yeah.
Yeah. So you were in the Marine Corps and a pilot.
Yeah, I flew F-18s in the Marine Corps for over 20 years of that.
Wow.
Graduated Top Gun all the way back in 2002, and then following that tour, I got selected for test pilot school, and I went out and found I was a test pilot for a few years. Went to Edwards Air Force Base. I was test pilot school, and then after that went up to China Lake, and I was a test pilot there.
Awesome.
I got to fly, Hornets, Super Hornets, and about 25 different other aircraft during that time at test pilot school too.
Yeah. So what does the Marine Corps use F-18s for exactly?
Well, it's fighter attack aircraft, so it's a multi-purpose aircraft, and we use it primarily, and we released it during our long war. We used it primarily for ISR, CAS, close air support, interdiction, surveillance, reconnaissance, missions like that. And then it's also it can be a frontline fighter aircraft and do air dominance, air superiority.
Gotcha. Because these are also used by the Navy, right?
Oh yeah,
and,
absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of their is that their primary?
Yeah, that's the way they were originally designed. I actually did a tour on the John C. Stennis, so I did 2 years on that. So I've got my time behind the boat and the ship.
Yeah, gotcha. So little different than the 16. Different aircraft in that respect. So.
Yeah, Hornets and Vipers, we talk about it. It's a great fight. So we love they're just a little bit different. We say with the Hornet, don't mess around with a Viper, kill it quick, just like you would a snake. Because over time they can build more energy than you, so you got to use your maneuverability.
Both with the dual vertical stabilizers.
No, the F-16 is a single tail.
16 is a single tail, which I thought was used by the
U.S. Air Force. That's right.
Yeah,
but I got to fly those at test pilot school.
Okay. Yeah, little smaller aircraft. And
yeah, it's smaller. It's lighter, and it's got a better thrust to weight ratio. It can't turn as quick, but it can sustain a turn because of its higher thrust to weight ratio.
Just different application.
That's right.
I guess.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. So, and then graduated from Top Gun.
Yeah. I was the guy that was going got sick, and they said next guy up, and all of a sudden I got thrown into it with about 3 or 4 weeks' notice, and got myself as prepared as I could, and then got to go off, and what a grand adventure that is. To this date, still probably the most professional training experience that I'd went through. Just the way and the talent of the instructors and the staff there, and then they send you back to take those skills and instruct, back in your squadron once once you've went through that. It's a big investment by the unit to send you there, and maintainers and with aircraft, because you're going to go away for 6 or 8 weeks, and then when you get back, you're expected to train everybody else up and get them up to standard. So
the obvious question is, how accurate are the movies in portraying the real Top Gun?
I told folks, what they capture really good is the emotional experience of it.
Okay. Sure.
And how you feel and the intensity. I think it does a good job there with the flying. Some of that's a little half baked, but it's a contact sport. Yeah. It really is. It's violent.
Sure. Are you concerned about the top brasses sort of changing the philosophy and almost repurposing the military? We've talked about it extensively on the program. General Milley, in particular, when he testified and said that white rage was the biggest issue facing the military.
And part of the reason I had to go was just the transition and what I saw there. The wokeness was definitely a part of my decision to retire, and I think for a lot of folks. I grew up in what I believe was a colorblind meritocracy. No organization is perfect, and you're always striving to be better. But when they focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and the identity politics coming to the forefront, that's really divisive. And it gets away from the objective, which is, you need to focus on the mission and accomplish the mission. And you have to promote senior leaders based on their performance, not their political reliability. And it just felt like, these guys were being looked at for how politically reliable they were for the regime that was coming in. And you saw a rapid change of behavior in the way our senior leaders were testifying and talking there. But underneath, it was already happening. We were seeing it happen at the Naval Academy where folks were, these classes are being taught on critical race theory, these books that are coming out on reading lists, professional reading lists, like Ibram Kendi. And those books just had nothing to do with actual leadership mission accomplishment. Now, the best I could say for the military, the top military brass, is maybe they were reacting to what was happening in our schools and they were trying to relate to those kids, but that's not the answer. The answer is mission first, people always. You treat everybody with dignity and respect, and you promote people based on their capability and the content of the character and
Sure.
their accomplishments and what they were able to do with whatever situation they found themselves in.
Sure. Yeah. We talked about in the Air Force the privilege walks that the airmen were discussing, that they were being forced to go through and go through this exercise that we're seeing happening in schools and a multitude of private enterprises as well, where a series of characteristics are listed on one side, and you have to match those up with whether or not that's a victim, indicative of being a victim or an oppressor, and we're just dividing people into these groups and categorizing everybody. And doing that in the military just seems counterproductive to the mission of the military.
Sure, and it shows distrust between your leaders and your subordinates, and you're asking your subordinates who come into the military, you really don't know when you first get in the military what you're getting into. I mean, you may have a concept of it, unless if you were a military brat and you grew up and in the family, you might have had a really good idea of what you're getting into. But for most of us, and especially our enlisted kids who come from all over the country, from small towns all over the country, they don't know what they're getting into. And if the first thing that they're told is, hey, we need to start looking at people based on the color of their skin and not how they behave. It's like so the first thing you're doing is you're asking them to question the authority that are there, and the people that are promoted above them are there to keep them alive, or at least make sure that their lives aren't wasted against objectives that aren't necessary.
Yeah, I've seen it, and I should say heard it anecdotally from veterans, ex-members, retired members of the military. I've seen some accounts shared by active members of the military or those going through West Point, Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, that have all reported the same. Rhino and I have talked about the promotion and advertising to try to recruit people into the military, and we're down. That's a big story.
Yeah.
The military's deeply concerned about that. The Army, I think, is experiencing a shortfall of about 10,000 this year is what they're projecting, which is a lot.
Right, and I mean, there's multiple reasons for that. One, people don't want to join that; they want to join a team that's focused on a mission. And the other is, I think these vaccine mandates are having something to do with it, right? Because the vaccine, and that's actually the reason I got out within 3 months after I had a conversation with a doctor that wasn't pleasant to have with him, And I asked him, I go, well, tell me about this vaccine. What's the long-term effects? Well, I can't tell you that. Okay, so is this a threat to me? Not really. So if I take this, am I going to not get COVID? No. If I take this, will I not be able to spread COVID? No. And so the operational risk management look at this is like this is an unnecessary risk, especially when I was planning on probably retiring within a couple of years anyway. It's like this doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so we're forcing this young, healthy population to take a vaccine, which we know doesn't keep them from getting a spread of it, and we don't know what the long-term effects are. I mean, that is a fact. And that doctor sat there in the office and told me that, and they're still forcing this vaccine on people. And frankly, I don't even think they should be offering it to young, healthy people going into the military. It doesn't make sense logically.
Yeah, I understand. I do think that is a deterrent, but I know some of the promotion and advertising is what's disturbed me. And I contrasted that to an era from my college days where it was something I thought about, and the advertising really was energizing. It was attractive. It made the military service look like the noble service that it is, and I think it was very effective. And now it's, we're going after transgenders. It's just crazy.
Well, you want, and it's a heroic service, right? And it is an honorable service. And this is the greatest country in the world still, even though there's some crazy stuff going on in it, which we need to save. But when you focus on something other than that heroic aspect and the noble aspect of military service, you're just not going to get as many people to sign up for it. And this whole making it about you or identity politics doesn't work either, because people they are who they are. They want to join a team. They want to become something greater than themselves. They want to serve something greater than themselves.
And I think a lot of folks that maybe are at that point in their life, they're not really sure what they want to do long term, and they opt to enter the military. I think you're right. They want to be part of a team. They want to be part of a purpose and a mission. And to a great extent, it's the structure of the military and the discipline that they seek, and it's also what they need often. So,
absolutely,
no doubt about it. You want to hang around for another segment, kind of
Sure.
see what else you got going on? I know you're involved with a couple of organizations as well, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about that. We'll talk about Mississippi for America first, and some things we got going on, and some stuff in the second district.
All right, we'll take a break right here. We've got Colonel Ghannon Crow of Burton in the Element Well Studios. Middays will be right back. We've got Colonel Ghannon Burton in the studio, a Top Gun graduate, retired from the United States Marine Corps, several years of flying F-18s, right, and a number of other aircraft as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, but appreciate you being here. So, tell us a little bit about an organization that I believe you launched it, right?
That's right. It's Mississippi for America First. So just to back up for a second, I was born here in Mississippi. I say that I was born in Red Bay, Alabama, but everybody in that part of Mississippi was born at Red Bay because that was the nearest hospital.
I got you.
And then I went to high school, graduated from Belmont High, went to Northeast Mississippi Community College, and then Mississippi State University, and graduated from there with a degree in electrical engineering.
Gotcha.
And had an amazing career, and I'm going around and I'm talking to folks about that and thanking them, because if you see a turtle up on a fence post and you're walking through a field, that guy didn't get there by himself, right? It took a community and a lot of folks raising coaches and everything else. And when you're out there on the tip of the spear, and you're hooking and jabbing, you forget a lot about all that infrastructure that's behind you that was helping you out along the way that was there. And there was a community back in. They were in the back of my mind when I was out there because I didn't want to let them down. Yeah. But I didn't appreciate how much work they were doing. Setting up the schools, setting up the school programs, going and coaching football or helping out the little league teams. All that stuff matters, right? The churches and those folks serving. So when Carol and I left Korea for the Pentagon, which was my last tour, and we landed in D.C., it just reminded me of a dystopian environment that was locked down. We were right there at the height of the COVID, and it was really, really bad to see, and it looked like the community wasn't functioning. Yeah. And so when I made the decision to retire, I got to get back here to Mississippi, set up my own individual sources of protein and all that. On our farm, we got everything set up where we could survive. We knew we'd be good, and then and I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't just retire here and set up my aiming stakes and prepare for a zombie apocalypse. I got to get out there and do something. So I started an organization with some good friend Ken Delaney and some other great folks called Mississippi for America First. Mm-hmm. And really what it does is it helps me get around and say yes to an event like this, an opportunity to come and talk to you guys and thank folks for their service. And then also at the same time tell them that there's hope and we got to stay engaged and we got to hold our elected leaders accountable for what's going on in the country right now and try to establish that. And so one of the main goals of it is to put pressure on the folks that we put up on the fence post, put pressure on our specifically our federal representatives to get out on the national stage and coordinate a message and push back against this insanity that we're seeing going on. Trump, Mar-a-Lago. Just when you think it can't get any worse, you find out that there was a congressman yesterday that had a phone raided, for God's sakes. So we've got this two-tier justice system that's happening. It's happening real time. We're seeing that, and that's not the country that I thought I was fighting for, and the country I was fighting for was one where we had equal justice on the law, just like it says on the steps of the Supreme Court. So what I've noticed here is is we've got pretty good state representatives. They're working hard. You got Lynn Fitch, Andy Gibson, Shad White, and these folks, and I'm meeting them, and I'm impressed. It's like they're trying, they're serving their best. But what's happening coming down from the federal government and these policies that are coming down are just absolutely crushing us. The inflation, the crime, the fentanyl, the open borders, all those things are happening. And we have got to get our elected representatives, we got to get behind them, but we have to make sure that they actually carry our voice to D.C. and that they express the outrage and the pain that folks are feeling. So that's what Mississippi for America First is about. You can find us at www.mfaf.us. We've got new content coming up there from time to time, and then you can also, if you want me to come speak at an event, you've got an event that's community related, that's action oriented. I'll be happy to. You can contact me on that website, and I'll come down and I'll give you some time. We'll talk about service. We'll talk about how important it is, and we'll talk about some ideas for holding our elected representatives accountable. So
can you share some of those with us, Colonel, that you feel that our elected representatives, and I assume you're referring to Mississippi's delegation?
Mississippi delegation in particular, yeah. It's we have the World Economic Forum out there that's influencing us. We have the Chinese Communist Party. If you read a book called Chaos Under Heaven by Josh Rogan, you'll find out that a lot of our elites have been captured, and then and I think Roger Wicker's a great guy, but you know what? He was at Davos. He went to Davos this year, May 22. And he's hanging out with the folks at the World Economic Forum who are putting these policies out that are crushing us. And it's not just crushing us. I think they're trying to take away our human agency. And we need them to know that we're watching. We need them to push back against those policies, and they need to do it publicly. They need to pick up the microphone that they've got, and they need to speak out. And they need to speak out in Washington, and they need to figure out a way to break into that D.C. bubble. So I ask them, what's your media strategy? What's your media strategy to actually break through and bust through? It's not Mississippi for America First doesn't endorse candidates, but I do, and I'm going in to help Brian Flowers, because I think what Benny Thompson's doing with the January 6th Commission is absolutely reprehensible. The policies that he's got, these open border policies that he's got, in the inflation that's being driven through these massive spending bills, is actually crushing the delta. 400% rise in fertilizer, right? All that. So, Brian needs help. He needs financial support, but I think he's going to need moral support and people to get out there. And so I made this sign. It's like, okay, if you can't give money, you can go stand in front of a gas station on a corner and say, hey, Benny did this,
Gotcha.
And let folks know. And so getting oriented on it, and like, okay, Benny Thompson, he's the guy. He needs to hear from you. You need to tell him this is not okay. We put you in front. And what's going on in our country is not okay. It's not okay that fertilizer prices are 400%, that farmers can't fertilize their fields. And not only that, but the cost that they're getting, they're not able to pass their cost on. The beef prices are being kept low, which is insane, but it's happening because the beef is flooding the market because people can't afford to feed them. They can't afford the hay. They can't afford the diesel fuel to do what they got to do. So.
Yeah, we had Mike McCormick, that's the president of Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, in this building, and as a matter of fact, on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about some of those economic headwinds and serious concerns that his members have. The farmers here in Mississippi, they're all being really just hit hard with these input price increases and not able to pass those on. So it's disturbing, no doubt about that.
So, and that's a good question too. It's like, so he's probably talking about it's got to put his business or our business, because it is kind of a collective, into jeopardy, right? Because how many these farmers have farmers insurance and they can't make bills. So now all that whole system, gets, stressed, right?
Yeah, it does. And so it's a combination of things. It's not only economic issues that have plagued the agricultural industry in Mississippi this year, but he mentioned that the dry weather in June, which is prime growing season for the crops, was a big issue, and they were concerned about it at the time. Last year we had record flooding in June, as I recall, and then this year we had really dry weather. So you always got that to contend with. I mean, that's just part of the industry. They're pretty resilient when it comes to that. But you just got all these other global economic factors that are figuring into the cost of farming operations. Yeah, there's serious concerns on his part, and I've come across a number of articles that say the same about farming in general across the country. There has been a rush of dumping cattle prematurely onto the market, which is not in the best interest of cattle farmers. A lot of that's being driven by the drought in the West is
Sure.
one particular issue. So, but anyhow, that's part of that industry, and it goes through those cycles. But some of the economic challenges were avoidable. I think there's no doubt about that.
Well, with the price of fuel, that's completely self-inflicted, and it's the Biden administration that is doing that. And they've got on this Green New Deal kick. And green energy kick when we were actually energy independent. Just over a year ago, we were a net exporter of oil, and they shut it down. And they did that by sending signals to the gas and oil industry, and they're listening. And
yeah.
So we need some policies with some long-term leases, and they need signals that hey, the government's not coming in to shut you down, and you're going to get a return on your investment, and we need you to pump. And the farmers need that fuel, and we need that fuel.
Yeah, I agree, and I've said from the beginning, if the president would come out today and say, "Hey, we're gonna cut all the anti-fossil fuels rhetoric, and we're gonna get out of the way and let the industry produce and thrive. We're gonna get out of their world and off their backs for 20, 25 years," we'd see a completely different reaction out of that industry. But they're dug in to completely eviscerate the fossil fuels industry, unfortunately, and we're all paying for it as a result.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Don't see that getting better till there's a political change. Sounds like that's what you're trying to do.
We're trying to put pressure on them to represent us, and that's what we want. Want them to pick up their mic. Pick up your mic if you're out there.
Colonel Ghannon Crow Burton, retired from the United States Marine Corps, has been our guest here on Middays. We'll step aside right here. Appreciate it, Colonel. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
We'll be